Good morning, students. I welcome you all once more to another online class. I hope you have been doing well at home. I hope you are staying safe. I hope you are adhering to all the instructions. Social distancing, washing your hands, and then making sure that you don't go out. And I hope all of us are healthy at home. On that note, you are all welcome to yet another class. Sorry, the class is coming a little bit behind the time. That is because of a lot of activities that I have been engaged in. I've been teaching year 200 level, another master's group, the PhD class, in addition to this your class. And then I have to do my writings at home. So all that, I've delayed this class. All the same, is still coming up. So the course remains social context of educational planning. Normal course, social context of educational planning. But for today, we shall be examining education and social change. Education and social change. You recall now that all the things we have been doing in this course has to do with social this, social that, social this, social that. You know, all keep making us to understand the importance of educational planning in society and to bring about social change. So, for any meaningful understanding of educational planning, to take place, the planner must understand the social variables or the social framework which underlie the educational planning process. Education is not planned for its own sake. Education is planned for the sake of society. And if that is the case, so the planner must understand that social variables or the social framework that inform the educational planning. That is the crux of this matter, the crux of what we are discussing, what we have been discussing, and the crux of what we'll be doing in this course. Is that understanding, that basic understanding of the role of education in bringing about changes in social life, social transformation of the people. So if we have that understanding, then we should be able to know how education can be planned in line with the social variables or in accordance with the social variables in the society. So it's against that background that all that we'll be doing in this course revolves around society, education and society, education and social change, education and what have you. So for today, we shall be examining education and social change. That is how education brings about social change and how social change affects education. This knowledge is important so that the educational planner will know exactly how to plan education so that it will bring about the desired social change in society. And he will also have the understanding of how social changes in society can also bring about changes in education. So you see the relationship. So that's exactly what we're going to be discussing this morning. You know, now the major business of education in every society across the globe is to transmit worthwhile values, to transmit skills, and then to transmit accumulated knowledge from one generation to the other. The major business of education is to transmit social values, to transmit skills, to transmit accumulated knowledge from one generation to the other. That's what education does. That is the business of education. That is what education is known for. So anybody who is in the business of education, this is your focus. How to transmit values, to inculcate skills, knowledge from one generation to the other. So education is an ongoing process that has always been there for every given society. It has always been there. So education in that process is known to have brought about change. Education in that process is known to have brought about change. Change in the political life of the people, change in the cultural life of the people, change in the religion of the people, change in education itself, change in science, and change in technology. So for this reason, education is seen as an agent of change. Education is therefore seen as an agent of change. Because education have the capacity to bring about transformation. Education have the capacity to bring about transformation, and therefore in the process effect changes where necessary. So no meaningful change can take place in society without education being called to effect those changes. So you see how that is the potency of education in transforming the society. You know, when any drug is prescribed for a sick patient, the question that the patient will ask is, what is the efficacy of this drug? What is the potency of this drug in curing this sickness? You know, in the case of education, education is always recommended for change, and education have never failed society along that line. It has always been a potent instrument in the transformation of a society. So that is why education is always being relied upon when any society wants to bring about change. You know, so we will be examining how education is able to do that in society as we progress in this course. So based on this, education have that power to develop an underdeveloped country. Education have the potency to develop an underdeveloped country. Education have the power to push forward a backward state. Have the power to push forward a state that is backward, push it forward to be at the front burner. Education have the potency to civilize an uncivilized nation. Education have the power to make strong a weak economy. So from all angles you look at it, education is always a potent instrument for social change. You know, so when anything goes wrong in any society, the first area they will look into to bring about the desired change is education. Now we have coronavirus. The clamor is to bring about the drug that will cure this sickness, and it's through the process of education that this discovery will be made, and people will go back to business. So you see, a whole lot of things that happen in society relies on education for its answer, for solution. So in the process, education have been able to bring about changes. So if any individual, group or nation or even a country need change, they must call education. Any society that desire change, it will look up to education for the desired change. That is why nations of the world, including Nigeria, see education as an instrument par excellence for national development. And national development is all about change, bringing about the desired change in the economic system, bringing about desired change in the political system, bringing about desired change in religion, bringing about desired change in all aspects of social life. Now, if that is what education does for the society, then let's quickly look at what change means. What then is change? What then is change in the real sense of that word, change? What do we mean by the term change? You know, it is popularly said that everybody, as you move around, you have people say change is inevitable. You know, change is constant. You know, change is a phenomenon that is always occurring. You know, change is a normal and natural condition. We have always had that. So if that is what is popularly known, then what then is change? You know, let's spare some academic definitions here. You know, so let's look at one of the definitions put forward by scholars in education. You see, a change is referred to as the alteration in the patterns of social organizations of specific groups within a society, or even of the society itself. Let's take that definition again. That change is defined as the alterations in the patterns of social organization of specific groups within a society, or even of the society itself. It's alterations in social groups, alterations in what obtains among social groups, alterations in the pattern of way of behavior, of the way they do things and all that. Changing, altering it from what exists to something new. Alterations in social patterns or social organizations, in what they do, and to a new way of doing things. That's change. When things are no longer done the way they were being done before, that is change. It takes different forms and different shapes. That's one definition. Let's look at another definition. Change is also defined as the alteration, rearrangement, or total replacement of phenomenon, values, or processes. Let's take that again. Change is also defined as the alteration, rearrangement, or total replacement of phenomenon, values, or processes. So change here is all embracing, in all angle, to be phenomenal, in all aspects of our life. Changes take place. Alterations of how things are done takes place. It could be a replacement of old way of doing things. It could be rearrangement of way things are done in values and the processes things are done. Now, if we have this understanding, so it means that change in one unit of social organization have the capacity of affecting or bringing about change in society general. Change that begins at a unit, at a point, can translate into a larger society and bring about change. So change is something that is permanent in every given society. It's something that must take place. So there has always been changes in society as a result of education. Experiences you gain on daily basis is part of education, and those experiences will help you to change the way you think, to change the way things are done, to change the processes of doing things, and to change the entire spectrum of how things are seen. All that make up what we call change. Now, having known what change is, that it has to do with alterations in the way things are done, then let's look at the types of change. Types of change. Change could be brought about as a result of inventions. Change could be brought about as a result of inventions. When new things are invented, that is change. Change could be brought about as a result of discoveries. When new things are discovered, things that were not there before, when they are discovered, that is change. Change could be brought about as a result of medical improvement of medical practices. Improvement of medical practices, that is change. Change could be brought about as a result of scientific and technological advancement. That's change. So that's one area we can experience change through inventions and discoveries. Inventions and discoveries. Inventions and discoveries in medical practices. Inventions and discoveries in technology. Inventions and discovery in science, and all that. So that could bring about change. And all this area I've mentioned now have relevance with education, have strong relationship with education. All right. Change could also come about as a result of population growth and population decline. Change could also be brought about as a result of population growth and population decline. Population growth when there is an increase in population, and such increase could be as a result of early marriage. It could be as a result of polygamy. It could be as a result of uncontrolled birth rate. Right? But change could also result as a result of death. A lot of things, like the present situation now, where we have the coronavirus. A lot of the number of recorded deaths across the world, we all know, is astonishing. As a result of the disease. So you see, it's bringing about change. And already we are beginning to experience change, even when the pandemic has not ended. Change is already taking place. So these are areas, the types of change. Change could also come as a result of changes in the economic production system, the system of production, the system of distribution of goods and services, which before now was not what is in practice now. The traditional method has given way to modern method of economic production. So we have change in the education system itself. Change as a result of change in the education system itself. Now, the method of education yesterday is no longer the method of education today. It has changed. Formerly, we used to have UPE program. Today, we have UBE program. So when there is change in society, that change also reflects in education, or also affects education and bring about changes in education. You know, now we have what is called the Girl Child Act, or the Child Right Act in education, which were not there before. You know, now we have the EFA, Education for All Goals, for all children of all categories, which wasn't there before. So there are also changes and improvement in the area of education, resulting from changes, the overall changes in society. They also have change as a result of health practices. Change as a result of health practices. Now, the health practices of this time is different from health practices of before now. You know, a person who was a medical doctor in the 60s, but if you bring him up now, he cannot qualify as a medical doctor because there are changes in practice. You know, the same thing with a teacher in the 60s. If you bring him now, he may not be able to teach well in this present modern time because a lot of changes have taken place. You know, so we also have change in people's character. Change in people's character. Change in character in dressing. Change in the food we eat. Change in our attitude. Change in music. Change in religion. Change in marriage. Change in ideas. And then social values. Change in social values. All these are various areas that changes take place, and therefore types of social change. Also have change in relationship pattern. Change in relationship pattern. Relationship pattern have changed over time. You know, right now we have several cases of divorce. We have changes in the patterns of relationship. We now have single parenting, a single parent. You know, we have family conflicts, unprecedented family conflicts. We have several cases of divorce, which has not been there before now. So there are a lot of changes, you know. And then there are changes in the role women play in society and family today. So a lot of changes are taking place in patterns of relationship. In the traditional society, it was a taboo for anybody to go into a relationship without getting married first. You know, in the traditional society, you must your wife virginity must be kept for the husband. You know, but unfortunately, all that have given way to new realities, new changes that have taken place in society today. In as much as we have positive changes, we also have negative changes. Negative changes take the form of war, disaster, flood, earthquake, economic depression, as we have presently occasioned by the pandemic. You know, unemployment, outbreak of disease, just like we have the coronavirus. So these are the types of social changes that can take place in a society, or we have already experienced in society. Now, if these are the areas of social change or types of social change, then how can education bring about social change? How can education bring about social change? Education can bring about social change in a number of ways. Education can bring about social change in a number of ways. That is why education is seen as an instrument of social change. Education is seen as an instrument of social change. And those areas that education can bring about social change can be examined under the following. So let's look at the areas that education brings about social change. We have mentioned areas of social change. We have mentioned types of social change here. Each of these types mentioned have significant relationship with education, playing a major role in them. Even when there is earthquake or when there is any pandemic as we have them now, it is education that will be called upon to please see what you can do. You know, so in all aspects, education have played a significant role in change. But let us look at specifically the specific areas education have played role in social change. So you can take them, then I'll take them one by one. Now, 1, education equips the people with skills. Education equips the people with skills and instills in them the competency for adaptability and flexibility. Education equips a people with skills and instills in them the competence of adaptability and flexibility in all their actions. Now, it is education that makes you to be adaptable to the environment you have found yourself. It equips you with the skill to adapt yourself in the environment you have found yourself. And it is education that instills in you the capacity to be flexible to changes. When things change, you see human beings changing. That change that we are able to adapt to is the direct result of the education we have acquired. That is why other animals that do not have change, such capacity, when changes occur, you see them dying away. Now, if diseases occurs in the animal among other animals, lesser animals, you see them dying. They don't have the capacity, to adapt and capacity to bring about how to go about tackle that problem. And you see them dying. And except if human beings come to their aid before they can survive. So when there is an outbreak of any disease for animals, you see all the animals will die, like the birds, the flu, and all that, bird flu. Except human being now uses his knowledge of education to bring about vaccines that will take care of that before they can survive. But human beings have the capacity to adapt and be flexible in his actions in such a way that he is able to survive in the environment. All that is made possible through the process of education. The education and knowledge we acquire through education help us to adapt and help us to be flexible. Then 2, education creates in individuals fertile ground for desired attitudinal changes. Education creates in the individual fertile ground for attitudinal changes. So it is only through the process of education that we acquire changes in attitude. And that attitude, we use it, in all aspects of our lives. In the area of health, in the area of behavior, in the area of hygiene, in the area of medical care, and all that. The medical practices of today differs from that of yesterday. And we are able to improve on today's practices because of the education we have received. In every family now, there is health practices. There are basic health practices, which were not there before. So, people before now died out of ignorance of certain diseases. But today, such diseases are made known through the process of education. And it has helped to change people's attitude in healthcare. A lot of women before now will die during childbirth. But today, there's improvement. There is this cesarean section that the children are brought out. But before now, all those misfortunes were tied to fetish belief. But through education, we have acquired the knowledge that these things are the direct result of some biological problems, which also has been taken care of through education. So it helps us to change in our attitudes over certain mundane things. All right. Education also creates political awareness. Education also creates political awareness. If you watch the Nigerian society today, you will agree with me that the political awareness is higher than before. A lot of people are now politically aware. So when if you tune to the radio, if you tune to Wazobia FM or 95.1, you will see the contributions that people are making from outside, which tells you that the level of awareness among the citizens is high. All that is made possible through education. Education, as we discuss here, is not just restricted to schooling. It's not just restricted to schooling. The education people acquire as a result of their living in society, whether formal or informal. They are all forms of education. So the level of awareness in politics is created through education. All right. Education also leads to growth of industries and social changes that accompanies it. Now, before now, in the early 60s or late 50s and early 60s, the predominant occupation in Nigeria was a traditional method of production, in which people farm, use a modern machete, hoe, and all that to plant. But today, there are a lot of changes that are taking place. We now have industry, and they will now have white-collar employment. The industries are now there to employ people, and people now are employed and paid. So you see, changes are taking place in society as a result of education that brought about industrial development. So nobody wants to rely again on the old method of doing things. People are now moving across to the use of industrial equipment in the production of goods and services. I remember quite well as a young boy, when our hair grew, they would take us to the barber who uses local bottle and local razor blade to barb our hair, and he will use one razor blade to barb all the people that come out, until that razor blade is no longer sharp before he will change it, you know. But all that have changed today as a result of improvement in equipment. That is the direct result of education. Now you can go to the barbering salon and then even with your own clipper and they barb your hair. You know, all that are the direct result of innovations brought about by education. Education also helped to produce the needed manpower in all sectors of the economy for national development. Every sector of the economy, like the agricultural sector, like the economic sector itself, the industrial sector, even the education sector itself, need manpower of different categories and in diverse numbers to be able to bring about development. And the source of supply is through education. So education produces the manpower that society needs. And those manpower act as agents of change in the areas of their training. Modern day teacher will use modern facilities to teach, and that will bring about changes in that area. So education is a strong instrument in the production of manpower that society needs to bring about change. Education also fosters originality and independent thinking. You know, education will sharpen your horizon, your way of thinking, your way of reasoning. You become analytical and then begin to reason, begin more rational in your reasoning capacity. All that is enhanced through the process of education. And when that is achieved, when your reasoning capacity increases, you know, it also makes you to begin to change your reasoning, your ideas, the way you see things. And when you change in the way you see things and in your ideas, that is change. That is change. You can say, oh, no. For if it was a 5 years time, I would have behaved this way. But for now, I think I have a lot of, I'm so informed that I can no longer behave that way. But that is change. And it's brought about through education. Your reasoning capacity has increased through the process of education. Education can also modify the existing status quo. Education can modify the way things are done. You will recall that before now, there is this emphasis that the man is the breadwinner. The man is the head of the family. The man is this in the family and all that. So all the respect is accorded the man. All that is beginning to change. Women are now working. Most women are now the breadwinners. And in fact, most women are now in charge of the family. So you see, changes is beginning to take place there. When women now get paid job as their husbands, they get job, go out to work, come back. So their place now is no longer in the kitchen as it used to be. A lot of changes are taking place. The man is no longer fully in control of the house. In fact, a study have said that the woman controls the family 75%, leaving 25% for the man. As things are moving now, a woman controls the family 75%, whether we like it or not. You know, and there are many development that is giving rise to that. You know, so changes in the way we do things, the modification of how things are done, you know, is the direct result of education. Education is known to have caused violent change. Education is known to have caused revolution in societies. All that is made possible through education. And when revolution or violent change takes place, then changes must occur. All that through the potency of education. It's only when you realize that things are going wrong, that through the power of education, that you will be able to begin to talk about change in such society. Whether the change is by violence or not by violence, the awareness itself and people now begin to talk about the evil will bring about change. And I want to bet us that in no distant time in Nigeria, things will begin to change as a result of the public outcry over the governance in Nigeria. Those in government will become very uncomfortable over time. They will become very uncomfortable knowing that people will react in a negative way against them. And then with time, there will be improvement. All right. So all the researches that are conducted and all the changes that come as a result of that is the direct result of education. It's the direct result of education. So researches are conducted and new knowledge are discovered. New way of doing things are discovered through the process of educational research. And all such research lead to changes in society. So you see the role of education in social transformation and social changes is it's unlimited. It doesn't have any end. It's ongoing, unlimited, and all right. So among all this, education also plays the role of social transformation, bringing about changes in the social life of the people, in the way we do things. For example, the way we dress, in our religious practices, the greeting patterns, the marriage, and several other, even in cultural practices. Education is known to have effected change in this area. Now, when you take up the picture of your mother when she was youthful, and examine the clothes she wore then, and examine what is in vogue now, the kind of clothes, you'll be laughing. But that was what was in vogue in her own time. And so in the next 15 years or even 20 years to come, what we dress today, children of that time will also laugh at us today. Because changes will take place. And the dress you wear today will no longer be in vogue in the next 20 years or thereabout. So and all that is made possible through the process of improvement in dressing brought about by education. Even in religious practice. Now, a very funny one is the traditional practices, where you go to the native doctor will invoke the god, and then the god will tell him something, and he will tell you that the god said that. So with Christianity coming on board, people are deviating from that practices and embracing Christianity. But over time again, because of that religious belief, where people so much believe that spiritual this thing for them. So the people are now turning churches to spiritual worship, where they now tell you visions, give you visions, and they give you messages from God and all that. And so you see the change that's taking place. Now people are moving from traditional practice and bringing traditional practices into religious practice, whereby you attend church and the church pastor will tell you that God said you do this, somebody is after your life, so you see all those kind of things. And then because of the old traditional way, so they are now modernizing it in Christian practices to still attract more people, and people are still moving. So religious practices, the way we dress, the way we do things, all that are all affected by the changes in all that are brought about by education. People now begin to reason and improve on what is on ground. Improve and modernize it. All right. Education is also capable of bringing about changes in the area of agricultural practices. Of course, you know that there are a lot of improvement in the food we eat, a lot of improvement in the method of production, in the agricultural sector and all that. So what was in practice before now is no longer in practice now as a result of education. And the kind of food that was eaten before now, there's a lot of improvement in agriculture leading to the production of new type of food. My father didn't eat endomie when he was being brought up. So if you give him endomie now, he finds it difficult. Endomie is not his type of food. If you give him garri 3 times daily, good. Even the garri is not keen to eat. So you see, the food we eat has been affected by educational development. So education has brought about improvement in the food we eat. So today there are varieties of food that people grow and eat. All that is a direct result of innovations and change brought about through the process of education. Education also helps to develop in the individual good sense of responsibility. Good sense of responsibility inculcate discipline in us. If not, everybody in the street will be fighting himself. But because you have acquired education instills in you certain level of discipline that enables you to conduct yourself in the society and behave well. You know, it is education that does that. You remove education, then you see disaster. You see a society that everybody against himself. We're fighting against ourselves. You know, so it is only education that helps to moderate us and help to refine our attitude to acceptable standard. All right. Education also helps to develop talents in the individual. And those talents, are used to bring about changes in society. Certain talents in you that are inborn in you. For example, let's say the talent of making music, the talent of sewing clothes, the talent of so all the variety of talent that are in the individual. It is through the process of education that those talents come to bear, and the individual now uses it to bring about certain level of change in society. All right. So these and numerous others that we cannot be able to mention here are the various ways education brings about change in society. So when we talk about education and social change, there are various areas that education have been able to bring about change in society. Now, having looked at all this and having explained them, the next port of call is the processes of change. All these things we have mentioned now. How does education affect the change? How does it affect the change? Through what process is education able to effect these changes? Education is able to effect these changes through several processes. Among these processes include 1. Discovery. 2. Invention. 3. Diffusion. So the processes through which education is able to bring about this change, to effect this change in society, is through discovery, through invention, and through diffusion. So what do we mean by discovery? Discovery is to discover things that are unknown before now. And most of the things that are unknown to man is only discovered through the process of education. There are a lot of things that nature or God has created and kept. And naturally they are all there. But God has also given man the knowledge to be able to discover these things. And the knowledge and power to discover these things can only be effected through the process of education. I'll give one example. You have heard of the man called Isaac Newton. In physics. Isaac Newton discovered the law of gravity. He discovered the law of gravity. That anything that goes up will always come down. And he demonstrated that through mathematical formula and a whole lot of other discoveries. When we discover new ways of practice, cultural practices, new ways of practices, that is discovery. And when such discoveries are made, it brings about social change. And one potent instrument that has always been used in the discovery of new things is education. Then the next way education have used in bringing about change is through inventions. Inventions are peculiar to education. All the inventions we talk about today in the world is brought about through the process of education. Now, when all this new knowledge are discovered, the new knowledge are taught, and then they help to transform the individual. And when the individual put this knowledge into practice, it brings about new inventions. Now, you are aware that we have inventions. Before now, the early man had used bow and arrow to kill animal. But through invention, man was able, through the process of education, to discover weapons like gun. He can now use to kill, to hunt and kill. There are also inventions in communication. For example, the GSM, the telephone, the computers. All these are inventions. In the area of transportation, there are inventions like the cars, the aeroplane, the bicycle. They are all inventions discovered through the process of invented through the process of education, and then which have brought about change in society. I remember in my mother used to tell me the story of how they traveled from Omagwa to Obogoro to go and sell their products, and they trek from my village Omagwa down to Obogoro Waterside Market to go and sell. Is it because they wanted to trek? Because there were no other means of transportation, so they had to trek it. He also told me how my grandmother, who was also a trader, used to trek to Port Harcourt to go and buy fish and sell her wares. In those days, trekking. Is it because they wanted to trek? No. Who will ever do that again now? Who will even trek from my village down to the station? Nobody does that again. So because there are inventions. You have the bicycle, you have the motorcycle, you have the keke now, and all that, which is all everywhere. So it is now taken for granted. But these are inventions. Before these things were invented, man had suffered a lot of difficulties and challenges. But today, the changes we have seen in society, we are taking them for granted just because we have seen them. But all that is made possible through the process of education. And therefore, life pattern changes in the way we do things, changes in the way we do business and all that. All resulting from inventions of man through education. Inventions have also improved practices in religion, practices in our belief, political philosophies, and in several other things. In every aspect, there are inventions to take care of most of our practices. And all that are the direct result of education. So without education, no meaningful change, not even one, will take place in society. So what it means here is that any nation that fails to rely on education for its development is toying with development. So the emphasis here is for those who plan education to understand the potency of education in bringing about change in society, and then use it as a weapon to bring about all the desired change we want our society to have. Then the last one of the process is diffusion. Now, diffusion occurs when two cultures come together. When two cultures come together, then certain practices are dropped. Certain practices are borrowed from this culture and they mix up with the original culture. It becomes diffused. And we have a lot of that today in our society because of our contact with the Western society, because of our contact with other countries. Nigerians travel to America, they travel to Europe, they travel to other countries of the world. Other countries also come here. We have the Chinese people here, we have the Indians here, we have the Americans here, and all that. And through the process of education, we acquire these cultural values and mix them, diffuse them together, and then it gives us a new pattern of culture. That is that diffusion. So you can see that our mode of dressing today is not our original fashion, not our original way of dressing. A lot has been diffused in our mode of dressing as a result of our contact with Western cultures and Western values. You know, so the suit we wear today is not our dressing pattern. It's a borrowed culture, which we have diffused into our own modern, our own way of dressing. So you see every man going to the office today dressing in suit. Suit is not our original practice. Even the wedding gown we wear is not our original practice. Our own original practice is traditional wears. You know, but today it has come to stay. These things have come to stay. They have come to stay as a result of diffusion. What we have learned from others. What we have learned from others. Even in the food we eat. The food we eat, our dressing pattern, our even behavior. Most people they want to speak like Americans. They want to speak like British. They want to speak like, you know, all that are all things that we have diffused into our own original cultural practice. And then, as we talk now, can we leave it again? They are going to stay with us. All that is made possible through the process of education. So, these are the various processes through which education can bring about social change. Now, having discussed the various ways education can bring about social change, it is also important we look at how social change can bring about change in education. How social change itself can bring about change in education. You know, so you see that because of the changes in society, changes in technology, changes in the way of doing things, it has also brought about changes in the way education is done, in the process of education. It has brought about changes in the process of education. You know, so because of changes in society, education itself cannot remain stagnant. Education itself is a part of the social variables, and therefore cannot remain stagnant while other aspects of social life is changing. Education in accordance must change with it, and therefore a lot of things have changed in the education system as a result of social change itself. Let me just give us a few examples here. You recall that when I was in primary school, when I was in primary school, we were doing calculations with biro. Using the calculations, we do it manually. All calculations are done manually, calculated from beginning to the end. And even in our external exams, we were not also allowed to use anything that will aid us in calculation. We must do it manually. But today, as a result of technological changes brought about by education, there is also a change in the way things are calculated in school. Students now use calculator. There's learning machines. People use in learning. People now use computer. The things that we had used our head before. Now, as a result of changes in so you see, so these inventions have also helped to improve educational practices. Now, what we are doing now, I'm teaching you people through online. It wasn't there before, but this is now made possible through inventions. So those inventions have also affected educational delivery. So it's not a one-way affair. While education brings about this changes also affects education in a number of ways. You know, now I had used chalk and slate to write as a beginner in primary school. Today, that is no longer in vogue. Technology has brought about a lot of changes and way of learning. That the way the primary child is learning now is no longer the way we used to learn. There's a lot of improvement. That improvement is the result of changes that have taken place in society. So those changes are also now affecting education. You know. So before now too, I remember very well. My father told me that when he finished his primary school, my grandfather had to shoot cannon for him to celebrate that victory of finishing primary school. And the old man had told him that primary school was the end of education. Anybody who reached that level, that was the end of it. Any other level is just jara, just a mere addition. According to my dad, they were celebrated when they finished primary school. But today, nobody talks about primary school. No, it's anybody talking about secondary school. So you see, because of the changes in society, changes in technology, changes in manpower need, so the thing that is in vogue today now is higher education. So emphasis now is on higher education. Anybody who haven't acquired higher education is not regarded. So the changes is also affecting the system of education and educational acquisition. Formerly, somebody with primary six, you can walk anywhere. But today, who is looking at primary 6? Did you go to school? Even secondary education, nobody looks at that. I remember that my first job as a secondary school graduate was I used school start to do my first job, and I was employed. Then school start were highly demanded. But today, all that have changed as a result of changes in society. For you to be highly regarded or get a good job, if it is possible, you have a. And today again, there is also high level of unemployment. All is the direct result of changes that are taking place in society, brought about by education. It's also creating unemployment, another change. So these are the various forms that education have created a change. Now, education have also changes in society have also brought about change in the curriculum content of education. The things we learned in primary and secondary are no longer what children are learning today. If you ask me to go and write external exam, WAEC exam today, I will fail, because the things I was taught in my days are no longer what children are learning now. I had learned additional mathematics. They are learning further mathematics. I did not learn computer. They are learning computer. Most of the subjects we didn't learn, they are learning them now. And these subjects are the direct result of innovations in society. Now, in my own time, there was no HIV education. And today, HIV education is taught in school, in the school curriculum. Now, coronavirus has brought another problem in society, which will bring about change. And that change will also affect the content of what is taught in school tomorrow. So you see, the changes in society result to change in the education system. The school syllabus have also changed over time. The schools, the curriculum content have changed over time. The school programs have also changed over time in accordance with changes that is taking place in the society. So it's a two-way affair. Whereas education brings about a change in society in all the sectors, the change in society occurring in all the sectors also also bring about change in education. So all this must be understood by the educational planner. When all this are understood by the educational planner, he is able to use all these variables in the planning process and know how to channel educational planning so that it will bring about the desired change, and how to use these changes that are taking place in society to bring about improvement and change in education itself. That's the hallmark of what we are talking about here. An understanding of all this is important for the educational planner, so that he will be able to know and understand how education can bring about change and plan education along that line to bring about the desired change. The desired change in the area of development in all the sectors. So education acquired for the sake of education is meaningless. Education that is acquired for the sake of education is meaningless. Except that education equips the individual to bring about change in his life and change in society, before we can say yes, education have really taken place. So when we have this understanding now, we begin to understand that most of the education we are giving out is becoming obsolete, and therefore there is need to change the pattern. Now, when from the onset, from the traditional society, education given to the child equips him to become functional in the society, and he will use that education to improve on himself and improve on the society, and changes will take place. Now, when education is no longer able to perform that function, provide functionality to the individual, then it means something is wrong with the educational planning process, and therefore desires a change itself. Now, when education is no longer giving those who acquire it the power to be employed, either by those who by the employment agencies, or by the individual himself, then it means that the education provided is becoming questionable, and therefore the planning process is faulty. Education must be planned to equip the individual. So those who are graduating from school today, who come out to look for job and cannot get a job placement for over 10-15 years, then something is wrong with the education they have acquired. That's the bottom line of the message here. Any education that is given out to the citizens that does not equip the citizens with meaningful skill to function well and bring about change in society, that education is faulty, and therefore the planning process is also faulty and need to be rectified. So that is the message here. So the educational planner must have to understand the whole process of planning education in such a way that it equips the individual with skills. And such skill is a skill that the individual will need to bring about desired change in society. In all the areas we have so far mentioned here, that education plays a significant role. The planner have to take into consideration those areas. Yeah, we plan education for technology, we plan education for health, we plan education for education itself, we plan education for social life, we plan education for family life, we plan education for religion, plan education. So when that is done, all the various social areas are captured in the educational planning process, and they are taught to the individual. They acquire the skill and move on to society to bring about the desired change. That's the message here. So any education that is not planned within the context of the social framework of any society, that society is bound to be stagnant, and it will remain where it is, and will rather begin to depend on societies that have planned their own along that line for their own development. So you see, except education is used to address these issues, we will remain underdeveloped. We will remain underdeveloped. And except education is directed towards equipping the individual, the citizen, with desired skill that will bring about discovery, that will bring about inventions, that will bring about diffusing the necessary culture, the knowledge that you will know that, yeah, we can accept this culture because it's good, the knowledge that this one is bad, the knowledge that this one will help us. Until education is able to equip the individual with that, we will continue to diffuse nonsense, continue to take nonsense from other cultures and put them into practice in our culture, and in the process create more problems for society. So these are the hallmark of educational planning. So that is the subject matter of what this lecture is all about. On that note, my dear students, I think we come to an end this topic on education and social change. So you have seen that there is a significant relationship between education and social change. It works both ways. Education can bring about social change, and social change can also bring about change in education. Thank you for listening. God bless you. Continue to stay safe at home.